A guy bumps into another guy. He says, "Oh, Shalom Aleichem, Rabbi Yid." He says, I remember you. He says, "No, I don't. We never met. I don't know who you are." He says, No, I promise you. Last year, Shavuos by the Kaisel. I met you at the Kaisel." The guy says, "It's impossible. I was never in Eretz Yisrael." He says, "Oh, now that you're saying that, I remember I was never either in Eretz Yisrael. It must have been another guy met another guy."
Welcome to Extra Sauce. My name is Chaim Cohn, and this podcast is a conversation that I had with my close friend Chezzi Denebeim back on January 12th. So that was quite a while ago. And, why did it take me 10 months to put it up? I can take a deep dive into why, and I'd love to do that. I'd really love to talk about myself, and especially my habits of procrastinating and all that stuff. And maybe one day I'll get to do that. But for now, I just want to share one thought as it relates to some of what we get into in this episode. So one of the reasons I tend to push things off, specifically, let's say this podcast, editing and publishing something, it doesn't feel natural for me to express myself, certainly in any public way, or by doing something significant or sharing something that's meaningful to me when I don't feel up to par with what I'm sharing. And I don't just mean like the usual imposter syndrome thing that all of us have in some form or another. I mean, like, if I'm not feeling a sense of inner resolution around life itself, I don't feel I'm able to do something in any outward way. Like, I think I have to wait for all the pieces to fall into place and collect myself and fill myself up from within, and then hopefully eventually it will lead to doing something external, or, for the benefit of someone outside of me. And I suppose there's a lot of truth there. We can't really give what we haven't got, but sometimes that's kind of misunderstood. Like, I just take it on face value that I haven't got it. But if I look a bit deeper, like, what haven't I got? Really? I haven't got it? It feels like I haven't got it. But that may only be as true as the feeling. Because the reality is that when I move beyond that, and I open just a pinhole of action, I find out that I do have it. Oh, I just forgot that I had it. And it's so counterintuitive for me. It's just not how my mind works. My mind just reverts back to this place. I guess I'm starting all over again. If I'm being honest with myself, I can't think of any significant positive change in my life that I've executed that I discovered by some way of inner resolution. That's not to say that there hasn't been resolution. There have been a lot. And I continue to seek more resolution. But when I have found it, it was always preceded by some form of action. Usually when I wasn't looking for it, I just started something. The expression goes, move a muscle, change a thought. Or another favorite, you can't think your way into right action, but you can act your way into right thinking. Again, it's really counterintuitive, but it kind of hit me. Well, actually, as I started editing this podcast, just started. It takes a lot for me to surrender my near obsession with thinking my way through things, but opening just a pinhole of action seems to start the process of moving inner mountains. So let's get to this conversation with Chezzi. Some of you listening know who Chezzi Denebeim is or know of him, and there's a lot I could say about him for those who don't. I think I'll ask my friend Gilbert Gottfried to help me out here.
Hi, this is Gilbert Gottfried. Well, Chezzi, what can be said about you? Chezzi, you have the hands of a Gentile, the heart of a Bubby, and the soul of a Rebbe. Moses wishes he could have been you. When Moses was parting the Red Sea, he said Chezzi would have done something a lot more impressive. So here's a prayer for you, Chezzi.
Oh, Gilbert Gottfried's davening is certainly something special. So, for those of you who don't know who Chezzi is, in 2011, Chezzi started a shul in Crown Heights called Chevra Yisrael, and it quickly flourished into a very vibrant community of people in Crown Heights, and not just in Crown Heights, but throughout New York, who came both for davening, but throughout the year for events and functions, people who were seeking more. And Chezzi accomplished a lot of great things, and he sacrificed a lot in the process. More significantly, he accomplished what is perhaps the most daring thing. He took the road less traveled, and he took that ultimate journey, a journey toward himself. Chezzi is one of my most favorite people in the world. He's one of my closest friends, and I couldn't keep going on and make him very uncomfortable. But simply put, when I think of that beautiful line, "This above all else, to thine own self be true," I think of Chezzi. So, here's Chezzi.
So you grew up in Palm Springs, California.
My parents were sent over there on shlichus in 1980, and they raised us there. They made a school and a shul, all that stuff. And so we grew up. I mean, we had other kids because we had a school, but it comes to a certain, it only went to a certain grade.
Other kids in the community that you had?
Yeah. But Palm Springs is kind of a transient place. There's mostly older people there. So not that many families that stayed there the entire time. And the school only went to a certain age. And at 11, I left home to yeshiva, which all my siblings did at roughly the ages of 10 or 11. And I went to Detroit. Wait, you want to hear about Palm Springs?
A little bit more about Palm Springs. I want to say, how many siblings are you?
So we're 14 kids, Kanai 8 sisters, and I have 5 brothers. And we grew up over there, and a very tight unit, Baruch Hashem. We had a very, very Chassidish upbringing. We were removed from the social aspect of Lubavitch because there was very few other Lubavitchers that we came into contact with. My first real exposure was after I left home, for the most part. But somehow, by the grace of God, my parents, they somehow instilled in us a love and a deep appreciation for Yiddishkeit and Torah mitzvahs and Chassidus, and it's something that every one of us still, we all somehow have held very tightly onto that. It's who we are. It's a very important part of our identity. Even me, as I wandered a little bit, and I still wander from time to time. Maybe I'm always, but that's my home. That's my home. That's who I am. That's who I'm always going to be, and I give 100% credit to my parents for that. I don't even know if they knew that they were doing that. They were just doing their thing, but they're very, very Chassidish Yidden, both of them. It's incredible, and they're even now the whole time they're giving shiurim and they're being mekad of people and they're talking and counseling and everything. They're always, and they love it. And it didn't bring them any, glory, or there's almost no, the fruit of their labor is really just in the work itself. They didn't get, there was no prize that they ever got in any kind of way. So, and they instilled that in us just by virtue of proximity, I guess.
One thing I noticed when I was there at Simchas Torah is the nature of your family unit. I've never really seen anything like it.
That's one of the upsides of being in a place where there's nobody else. So our friends, our best friends, is our family. And so it has its downsides also, because it makes you, it doesn't necessarily foster any kind of outward, we're content just with ourselves. I would be happy to just hang out with them for the rest of my life. It's very geschmack. For me, it's very enjoyable. And for most of us, it is. So yeah, that definitely is an incredible, I'm very fortunate in that way.
So not to go on like a whole long chronological history of what followed, you were about to say that you went to Detroit. I'm sure that was a trip. And then I'm sure you went on your other journeys, as any Lubavitch Bacher does. But at some point you got married and you settled in Crown Heights. How old were you then?
I got married at 23. And then 5 months later, I moved. I went away for a little bit, for 5 months to Eretz Yisrael, and then we came back. And then lived in Crown Heights until for a little over 5 years.
You quite organically, on a whim, started this Friday Night Minyan. It turned into Cheva Avos Yisrael, which then became a real community, a serious community, with a location, with a shul, with programs, with a social fabric, with these, summer trips, and just like something that I became a part of a little bit later on, maybe 2 or 3 years after you started. I think 2 years, and I consider that like a privilege. I'm so grateful that I did come around, and I was just floored. And like, you did a significant thing. Like, I wouldn't say you gave birth, because clearly there was something that was needed and kind of boiling over that you tapped into, and then just kind of exploded, and it was like waiting just for it to come about. And then it did. And for 5 years, you were doing that kind of work. And I guess just on the face of it, what was that experience like, starting something, not knowing if, what, and why, and then it becoming something without really intending it to become that?
So it's actually very good what you said, that I didn't create this thing in a sense of creating something. It was everything was already there, and it happened, I think, by accident mostly. It's kind of like just a few days ago, my brother-in-law Boz, he told me this chiddush about trees, which I never knew, is that we kind of understand. We look at a tree and we're like, where did all the mamashis, where did the material of the tree come from? And we assume that it comes from the ground, right? Like the dirt somehow is converted into wood and leaves and all of that. And the truth is, I guess, scientifically, the tree, most of the material in the tree actually comes from the air, which blew my mind because what's in the air? The air is air. The truth is, I guess in short, like the tree, it traps carbon and then it releases oxygen and whatever, the carbon or whatever, everything's already around it. The tree is in the air, but what it's doing is it's just pulling all of that stuff. And I wasn't trying to make a show. The truth is, to be honest, I was trying to get out of Crown Heights. I didn't want to live there because I always wanted to go on shlichus, and I was looking at a few places, including Back Bay and Boston and different places. And I wanted that. That's what I knew, and I thought I'm going to go on shlichus, and it wasn't working out for different reasons. And so I was in Crown Heights, and at a certain point, I just said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to just do my own thing, and it's going to be like my whatever. I didn't have any thoughts about what it might be, and I probably wouldn't have even ended up doing it, except that Yossi Levin, he told me in the chutzner one time on Shabbos, I told him, I'm gonna.
The Denebeims own the chutzner. I wasn't in 770. I remember you and Arik, particularly Arik, would roam around that chutzner.
Yeah. We spent a lot of time there. A very special place. And Yossi Levin told me, I said I'm going to open a shul. He's like, I'm opening a shul. You're not. He's like, you're never going to do it. And I said, you know what? I'm going to show this guy. And the next week I did it. So if not for him, I probably wouldn't have done it. And but I wanted that because
you B'chlal wake up in the morning for spite.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. I'm not. So I wanted something for myself. I wasn't thinking like we'll make a whole thing and this. I wanted like a minyan like for singing and davening. And the truth is, actually, the idea came to me because a very close friend of mine, Mendel Cement, he would hang out in the chutzner too. I don't know if he's going to like if I say this, but he's not a big davener, let's just say, inside of 770. So he would hang outside in the chutzner, and I was there after Eretz Yisrael as a bacher, and I would sing over there. We would sing like different songs, that I had learned in Eretz Yisrael. And one time, and I became good friends with him there in the chutzner, and he said, "Why don't you come to my house? We'll do a little minyan." So I said, that's a great idea, and it was his birthday, so I wasn't going to do it. I wasn't going to do it, but I wasn't on top of it. But at one point, Yossi, his son, who is a good friend of mine, he told me, come do it this week for my father's birthday. And so I did. I think it was his father's birthday. I think it was Mendel's birthday. And we went there, and they brought a bunch of Lubavitcher Bacharim, friends of mine, different people I didn't know. We were going to do it in what's that shul on Crown Street? I don't know. Aguda? Mm-hmm. No, Menachem Nachum.
Right.
Menachem Nachum. Or no, Aguda. And then they didn't want us to do it there. I don't know, because they heard it might be Karlebach. I don't know, whatever. Anyhow, we did it in his house, and it was fantastic. But that put a little seed in my mind, and so I did it. And we borrowed some Siddurim from 770 and got some chairs. I was living then across the street from Amulo, and I enlisted a few people. I sent out a message on Facebook to some people that I know and friends of mine, different people that I thought might be interested, and people are like, I didn't know. I didn't get a very strong response on my messages, but then we did it, and a lot of people showed up. It was like very, very packed, and I think that it was very overwhelming. But that once it happened, then it was there, and then you just continue. You start expanding, and then we moved out of there very quickly, and then whatever. So then the shul became whatever it became. There was a lot of people got involved.
So this is happening. I'm more asking what's going on for you as an individual while this is unfolding. It's almost happening to you.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, it became my entire life. I was experiencing the stirrings of once your plans fall apart, right? Once the things that you assumed life would be are no longer, you start to and you're not even aware of what's happening. You're not aware that they're falling apart. You just know that life is uncomfortable for whatever it might be, because you have fantasies when you're a bachid of what life is going to be for you, and then life actually happens, and you see that it's not like that. So I threw myself into the work in earnest and just did all of the steps. What was happening emotionally during that time, I wasn't very self-aware necessarily, but what started to happen was, because of whatever reasons, because of leadership. Now I was in a leadership position, and it was in the community, so there was a lot of pushback, and from everywhere. I got the pushback from everywhere, and then you have to start making decisions. You have to start deciding who are you? Especially people are pushing you everyone wants to know exactly what you are, You yourself don't know. Mm-hmm. And so I was just doing all of the steps.
It's an interesting phenomenon that is a human thing, but notice that, let's say they put signs up for an event or a certain pa'ula, some project or some campaign or even a community event. I'll put up a sign around Kingston Avenue. And I've noticed this, and I noticed myself doing it. Before I even read what the event is, I look on the bottom, who's putting it together, right?
Yeah.
Not what it is, but right away, oh, that guy, who is he to be doing that? And obviously, there's an expression called contempt prior to investigation, right? So, because it keeps me safe, I don't have to really feel challenged or even, questioning why or should I be doing something or even it's like, who's this person that thinks they have the right to sell me on what, and I don't even have to find out the what, assuming I have one reason to, categorize it, whatever. So it sounds like a little bit what you're describing is that you're on the receiving end of that kind of speculation, if you will. Am I changing anything? No. And what's that like? Especially because you were kind of, at this point, it's like only 8 or so years later, and like now all of a sudden the things that you were doing are pretty much standard. Like it sometimes takes one person to start something, but at the time it was like, whoa, it's Kalbach and Crown Heights, and having events that are mixed. And what did it feel like to be on the receiving end of that kind of questioning, and there were like op-eds being written, that kind of thing? All of a sudden you become a figure, you become something that's representing something.
The truth is, the question really goes earlier, because what it did was it just brought out a very defiant side of myself. Like, I already got a good education in Detroit to not respect any institution, and not disrespect, but you know what I'm saying? Why? I could just as well be the institution. So why?
Meaning opposition is only a reason to go stronger. It's not a deterrent.
Yeah. Like banned in Boston, So, and for me, I've always felt on the inside, but also a little bit on the outside, because of my. I did have a little bit of a chip on my shoulder growing up, because my mother comes from very, Chassidish pedigree. Spitz Chabad, and my father does, and he comes from Temple Emmanuel in San Francisco. So I never felt ultimately that I was on the inside, and if I'm not going to be on the inside, it's like that Bob Dylan song is about Joey. He was always on the outside of whatever side there was. So you tell me the side, and I'll go on the other one. Stays, which isn't, I think in your adolescence, that's the response that you have. As you get older, you become a little bit more mature, and it becomes a lot more nuanced and sensitive and thoughtful. At that point, I did have, so I was like, yeah, bring it on. But my wife at the time and my family were, I guess, trying to temper me. And that was for the best. That was a good thing, because in something like this, you could get into your head and it's you against everyone, and you double down, and then you keep on doubling down, and you don't know where you started off. So luckily, that was keeping me in line. I hated it back then, my sister, one of my older sisters, who I respect very much, respect all of them, but she would call me out a lot, and she would say she wasn't opposed to any of the stuff that were happening there, but it got to my head.
She saw the impact it was having on you.
Yeah, I was on a very big ego trip, and I wasn't aware of it, and so I would get very upset when I would get called out, but it was, but I would also rationalize it by saying we're doing something good, even if one person is benefiting from this, then then I need to continue. Ultimately, because there was a huge dissonance with what I was doing and what was happening inside, I was also going through a very profound and prolonged crisis in my own personal life, and it affected every part of my life, and not least of which was my faith for that time. It became a very, very difficult thing, because once you start down the path of questioning things, and I would never think, oh, should a woman hold it tight? I don't care if you want to hold it tight, hold it. Don't. But once people in the community were saying we want to hold it tighter, I said, oh, well, if they're not going to give it to you anywhere else, we have to find out if you can have it here, and if you can, then we'll give it to you. But then you start, when you realize that
you opened the Pandora's box,
big time, and the Pandora's box. What I didn't realize then was I opened the Pandora's box in my own life, and I started down that path, and it became very difficult for me because now the way I understood the world, the way I understood life and reality and my place in it was all through the lens of every single thing that I'd been raised with, and I never bothered to question any of it because it was perfect for me.
It was working.
Until it wasn't. Yeah,
so there was a point at which you decided that you were taking a little sabbatical to Israel. You're going to study a little bit in yeshiva, and it kind of jolted people. A rabbi, and at that point, the shul was at its height. It was really growing by leaps and bounds, and you all of a sudden take off for 3 or 4 months. I think it was. At least you said you would.
It was a month.
A month. Oh, okay, but it felt longer.
Well, I did it 3 times.
So
each time was a month.
Yeah. And then you came back, and it was like, oh, you're refreshed. And then it seemed like, it's just as a friend, it seemed like more of the same was going on for you. Would that be correct?
Yeah, very much. Yeah.
And then a few months after that, you had you invited people for the shul's town hall meeting, and you made an announcement that kind of jolted everyone in the room. I was there, and you announced that you and Seema would be stepping away from the shul. And you had already been in the year before kind of really encouraging people to go back to the grassroots nature of the shul, and that created it in the first place, and have people step up and take an active role and taking responsibility for it and not leaving it on you. And that's always a good thing, I think, in general, even for someone who isn't feeling burdened, to give the community that kind of responsibility. But But you actively, you said that you would be stepping away from it, and it was surprising because here you have, it's unheard of for someone to step away from something that's really flourishing and working.
I did that. I made that decision because that was the only path that I could see. I was in a dark place. All those trips to Israel were me trying to resolve what was happening in myself, and trying to reconcile what I had become versus who I was as a person. And I never thought of myself until that point as being my own person. It was always, I was always you're a shliach, and I am a shliach, but I had a very kind of childish understanding of what that means. And I was growing up very late. That's the truth. I was maturing at a very late stage, and it's very, very jarring for me. And I stuck it out as long as I could. I would say
you didn't see a light at the end of it. You had no idea.
No. And in fact, the more successful the shul became, the more conflicted I became. I was beginning a journey. I wasn't very well aware of it, but I was beginning a personal journey, and it didn't necessarily fit into the public role as a rabbi, and I was having a very hard time reconciling the two. If what somebody has works for them, then it works for them. You can't argue with success. Like I remember thinking at a certain point that it was, it's like there's like one of the famous laws of motion is that an object in motion will stay in motion. In other words, if there was no force to stop something, it would continue in a perfectly straight line, right? If you throw a ball, it only falls because the power of gravity is stronger than your arm. And so I technically could have continued in that path without ever questioning it. The only reason that I didn't was because I couldn't. In other words, the Ribbono Shel Olam, what I found later, he puts you where you have to go. And sometimes he has to force you, screaming and kicking, or kicking and screaming. He has to force you somewhere because you have to be there. But if you don't have to be there, then there's no reason to go. I had to leave because I had to leave. In myself, I realized I couldn't stay.
How do you view that now?
In retrospect, it's the greatest gift that I got, even though it was difficult at the time to accept, because I could have never left, It could have been I could have been imprisoned over there, and I could have never, I see now that I would not have been able to embark on any kind of meaningful journey of self-discovery so long as I was in the public eye. The minute that I left and I went to Boston, I had it was like a reprieve from the noise, the din, like the frenzy of everything. And it gave me a lot of much needed space, which gave me perspective. So
I guess self-discovery is exactly that, something that you need to do by yourself.
You can't do it when you're being watched. It's not.
So one of the first things you did after you made that change and in Boston is you went to carpentry school. Is that the correct term?
Yeah. Woodworking school.
Right. And you were talking to me before about the value and the gift in your life that has been working with your hands, and something that you've always enjoyed, but you really committed yourself to. And you were talking about the value of that, even objectively, not just for yourself. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, the truth is I wasn't always I didn't do anything with my hands most of my life. I didn't know that I was handy, or that I would have any joy in building. Mostly all of those things bored me until I was in the shul, and it was always very tumultuous. There was always something going on, a big party or a big, there was always something happening, and a lot of pressure and it was very overwhelming. And the one thing I think that gave me, it was like therapeutic for me, that kind of pulled me, that grounded me, was building things and working things. I built like this big clunky table in the shul, which is actually now I realized the worst construction of anything I've ever seen. It was terrible, and it was also very dangerous because it weighed like 800 pounds. And, and all these people would sit at the table. It was like the head table in the women's section. I only realized like the whole thing would shake, and it was made out of these big, 4x12s or something, like beams, And I built that, and then I built out in Kodesh. Heshi Persian gave me $1,000, and he said, "Build it out in Kodesh." It's a janky out in Kodesh, let me tell you. I built like a few really very primitive pieces, but for me, they were I loved them, and I loved building them. And then I built a kitchen in the apartment where we were living. Probably the worst kitchen I've ever seen in my life, but it was all of my handiwork, I also, very poor design, but that gave me a portal. In other words, I wouldn't have been able to leave the shul had I not had something, a chutei shel machat,
an anchor,
something, one little thing that I could sink my teeth into. And that was it. And I love woodworking, and it's extremely cathartic. And there's nothing that I could suggest to anybody anywhere who's experiencing any kind of difficulty in their life that has been more helpful for me and that might be helpful for them than working with your hands. I've gotten into electrical work and all kinds of millwork and furniture and construction, and all of these things for me are very beautiful. For me, they're very, very, they help me resolve small issues.
Right.
So that I realize, and
there is science behind it. Particularly fascinated lately about with EMDR therapy, which I'm not going to get the acronym correct, but the point is, at first they thought it was specifically connected to eye movement. Then they realized it was any repetitive movement, consistent repetitive movement with some consciousness preceding it. And then I realized as a kid, I used to do things I didn't know what I was doing. And they weren't exactly building something, but I find like some of my best reprieves I have from stress or anxiety is when I accompany it with, sometimes I'll walk in a specific circle, in a specific movement, not like obsessively compulsive, but wash the dishes or do something physical. And also there's a repetitious nature to what I'm doing, and it's with my hands. I don't know if that's connected, but I think there's something there.
Very much. Yeah, I think it's like because you shouldn't be afforded the luxury to sit and contemplate your navel all day. You'll get depressed. You're never going to figure out the meaning of life or any of these things. None of those things could be answered even by thinking or studying them. The thing that I think does answer them is just by being grounded to life itself. And being connected to life itself, and doing these things, you try and figure out the solution. What am I supposed to do with my life? Who am I? What am I? What is this to me? You're probably not going to figure it out by trying to figure it out. But the brain, I read this somewhere, probably in a book, or maybe it was on Daily Mail, but that when you do small tasks, your brain actually gets the same pleasure from solving small, just getting small solutions to things, the same way as figuring out. Sorry, my words are failing me here. You get the same pleasure from solving a small problem as you do a big problem. So why try and solve big problems? Just solve a bunch of little problems and you're fine.
Right.
And that actually works.
Right.
That's the science I think you're talking about. Just clean your house. If you, it's the first thing, just do the dishes.
Right. Because the thing, like you're saying, the big stuff, we don't figure them out by figuring them out, as you put it. Right. It's like one day it occurs to us like, maybe my entire approach and conception of that big problem was just rooted in some old way of thinking. It's like, wow, this was such a simple solution. It just involved me maybe like, I don't know, not doing that thing again that doesn't work for me, changing by just not going there, whatever it is, right? It's I didn't even think about it. And oftentimes what preceded that was some kind of very minor change, like you're talking about. Like I'm thinking clearer just because, I don't know, I clean the air conditioner filter.
I'm sure there's going to be people that will laugh at this and say, oh, you're romanticizing this. But you know what? At least try it.
You said something, we had a farbrengen in my apartment Thursday night. You said something very beautiful. I wonder if you could repeat it. On the pasuk from Tehillim, Vanis Filasi.
Should I give some context?
Yeah. I think it's very related to what we've been talking about. That's why I'm bringing it up.
Yeah. So I think it's an approach to life that has resonated with me, and specifically as it relates to work and then to relationships and to everything. I think that we have a misconception that the work that we do is a means to make a living, to support a family, to augment or support a life outside of the work. In other words, the work is not the goal. The work is just something that gets you there, a means. And I was given a book a couple years ago by Yehudi Leib Mishaninov, and I haven't created the time to read that much, and I don't have that much Sitzfleisch for it, but I did read this book called Crossing the Unknown Sea, Crossing the Unknown Sea, work as a pilgrimage of identity. And it's by an English guy named David White. And I read the book, and I think it changed my life in a very, very important way. And in the beginning chapter, I actually wish I could read it over here. Is basically the writer, this guy David White. He studied to be a marine biologist, and he was going through a crisis of faith, as it were, and or a crisis of work, or a crisis of identity. And he was trying to figure out what he's doing. He was doing the work, but he wasn't happy, and he was trying to figure out what his next thing is going to be. And basically, he had the opportunity to go on vacation with some friends in a cottage somewhere, I don't know, and in Wales or something. And they would be meeting there with them and their other friend, this guy who he never met. So he got there early, and the guy was there, but they hadn't come yet. So he sat down. It was raining. He describes the whole thing very beautifully. He's a poet. And they were drinking brandy, and they were talking about life, where they're from, what they do. And the guy was telling him what he does. He's a landscaper. But when he was talking to him, he saw that the guy had this very special light. It was like an aura. And there was something very, very powerful about him. He was a simple, humble guy. So he asked him, he said, tell me your story. And the guy said, I was a heroin addict my whole life, or whatever, most of my life. And it was the life of a heroin addict. It was a disaster. No connection with my family. Everything was just, I was living in a crack house in London, and my life was so terrible, and nothing was working. Even the drugs weren't working. And I said, it's time to end it all. And he said it was like a rainy day, and I climbed to the top story, and I jumped out the window. And for some reason, God decided, or whoever he believes, I don't know, decided that he basically, when he jumped out, his shirt got stuck on the
Railing?
On the railing, the gate, whatever there, and he landed face first into a planter, like but it was only mud in there. And he burst out crying. He looked at him, he realized how pathetic he was. He couldn't even kill himself successfully. His life was such a disaster, and he was crying and crying. T'mois shalish, and it was raining, and he doesn't know how long he was in there for, but he's sitting over there, and he saw how the rain it was making like these little rivers and puddles in the planter. And he started like playing with the mud and making little grooves and valleys and stuff. And he was like this this feeling overcame him that he had never experienced before. And it was this profound serenity. And he said for the first time in his life, he experienced this. It was like a religious experience where he felt like there was one little place in the world for him. And you know, it was in mud, but it was like one place that he could sink his teeth into, you know, and it was humble, you know. He would have never thought about it. And basically he it's very emotional. When I read this, a very powerful thing. I would suggest to everybody who I know to read the book, if they want to. And he felt this, he felt for a moment that he was at peace. And he decided at that minute that he's not going to kill himself. And he stood up and he cleaned off his clothes and he walked right out the door. Didn't look at any of his friends, all the junkies and his dealer and this. He walked out. He went straight to rehab. And a few weeks later, he got out and he took a job as a landscaper. And he said that was 10 years ago. And since then, he has a big team of landscapers working for him. He has jobs all over the place. And that's what he does. And and basically, the work that he was doing, and this is the groundbreaking for me. This was the groundbreaking change in perspective. His work wasn't a way to make money. He didn't care about money. His work was how to stay alive. That's what it was. His tikkun, his chelek in the world was the mud. That was all he did. He said, I work this because it's my life. I have to do this. I'm not doing it. There's no accolades for me. He happened to end up becoming a very successful landscaper. But that's secondary. It means nothing to him. For him, the only way to stay off of the heroin and to find any kind of meaning in his life was the work. In other words, he wasn't going to get a good vacation after doing the work. He wasn't going to make money and become rich and famous or this or that. The work alone was that was his avodah. And that changed my life when I read that, because it resonated so deeply with me, because I always understood that I was Arav, you know. I'm Arav. And everyone told me I'm Arav. People before, when I left the shul, they said, Hayatachen, you're leaving all this, and you know, and I told it to myself, and then I realized that the work alone needs to be something I was put into the world to do a certain work.
We once verbring about this idea that I heard from Chuck Chamberlain, that any means that isn't worth the means itself is not worth any end.
That's it. That's the whole thing. And that's how I'm trying to live my life now. Of course, my Yetzer Hara will always, you know, stick his head up and try and, you know, but now I could identify, oh, that's fine. That's the Yetzer Hara.
Wonder if that's the actual meaning of the words Igia Kapecha Ki Seichel.
Yeah, and that's a curse, by the way, but that's actually the biggest bracha. And I think
let's just translate it. Where does it come from, and translate the words? I think
it's a curse, right? Isn't it?
I think it's what after the Chet Tzadas.
Oh, the Chet Tzadas, yeah.
Sin of when Adam ate from the tree. So one of the curses, it was a few different things, but one of them was that man would have to toil for his food, for his survival. Otherwise, it was created originally that the fruits were just there. They wouldn't have to do the work. Now, mankind would have to actually work. It would have to be from the sweat of their brow that they would eat. So you're saying that it's stated as a curse, but you experience that as a blessing.
Yeah, and in Pirkei Avos, they turn the whole thing around. Chazal, they say, Yigeh kapecha ki seichel hashacha v'toiv lach. That's actually
a good thing.
Oh, you're very lucky. if you could identify.
We see
value in that.
we see the result of things being given to people on a silver platter. At least life as we know it today in the real world, it ends up being a curse.
Yeah.
And just in the interest of time again, so you live a life that is very much built on that principle today. And in the past number of years that I know you, it's more and more that. And at the same time, you've had tremendous growth in your own life. On the face of it, I had it today. I tell you all the time, people know that we're friends and they ask me, it's like, what? He's woodwork and he's building a house. Like a Rav becoming a Balagala, almost like crazy like that story, right?
Yeah.
And so on the face of it, it's simplistic. It doesn't seem at all that you experience it that way, clearly. But what has it been like, and what is it like now, in a nutshell, to be finding fulfillment in a I guess we would call simple but not simplistic way, without all the fanfare and all the glitz and glamour that life once came with?
I think that it's that goes back to your original question about that thing about Vanis Filosi, is that well, first of all, the fanfare, you should always be wary of hype, because that's what it is. It's hype. It is humbling for me, because I still have that voice in my head that says, my yoimru hagoyim. What are they thinking about me now? It's like I went down a level or a lot of levels, and first of all, it's a lot more. It's a lot more grounding, and the work has become the work. I'll tell you what it is. I'll tell you. Oh, I heard a good mashal about this a long time ago when I was in Mesivta. Mayor Kaplan, he said a vart of the Dubner Magid, who's famous for giving mashalim. So he asked. So somebody asked him. They said, "How do you make such good examples? How do you give such a good mashal?" Because he had so many. And he said, "Oh, I'll give you a good mashal." So he said, there was once a guy who was trying to learn archery, and he was practicing, and he finally heard that there was a famous archer, an old man. He lived somewhere, and this guy they said that he was rumored he had never missed a bullseye. So he went to visit this guy, and the guy shows him his backyard. There's like 1,000, what are they called? Targets over there. And in each target, there's an arrow dead center, right in the bullseye. And he was astounded. He said, how'd you do it? So the guy with all the pshittis, this old guy, he says, "I'll tell you why. Because the whole world, they make a big mistake. First, they paint a target, and then they try to shoot the bullseye. I first shoot the arrow, and then I paint the target around the arrow." So it was cute when he said it then, right? That's how he would make mashalim. First he puts and only recently I've started to appreciate the story in a different way. Before I made a target. It was the shul, it was being a shliach, it was being a rav, it was being a this, whatever. All very beautiful things. But maybe I was kept on missing the target because I don't have good aim. And the first thing that I had to do was stop trying to shoot the target and stop trying to become a famous chashva archer, because some people actually end up hitting the target. But then what? In the best case scenario, you hit a target that means nothing to you. It doesn't reflect anything about who you are. The first thing is you shoot the arrow. And then your next step is you paint a circle just around the arrow. And the thing I think that a lot of us are afraid of is the circle around the arrow is very small. It's very humble. It's not glitzy, and it's not cool. So you do that, and then you paint a little bit bigger circle around that one, and then you keep on making these concentric circles like this. Eventually the circle gets very big, but that big circle may not be with a lot of fanfare or this. It could be that your biggest circle is to be a fisherman somewhere. But why would you want anything else? You want to be, in other words, instead of trying to be something who you're not, your tachlis, your kavanah in this world is to be more of who you are. Just keep on making those little circles. Don't try and change anybody. Don't try and change anything. So that's the vart of Vanis Filasi.
I am the prayer.
Where he said, I am the prayer. In other words, we normally taich Vanis Filasi that
I pray.
I pray. And the Chassidish taich that I heard is Vanis Filasi. I'm the story here. It's not glamorous.
Yes, finish.
It's not glamorous. It's not. It's just a small circle.
So two things. Yeah, one. On the face of it, my instinct is to hear those words. I am the prayer. I am the message. From a place of hubris. Oh, you're the message, and you're saying that that's humble. Sounds like just more you. The irony is that acknowledging the I in this scenario is the most humble, because it's not about shooting to some outlandish target, which, by the way, is what becomes a moving target. Because when it's not me, it's never about that thing, because I've yet to establish me. So it's always, okay, if it's not this, now it's something else, now it's something else, now it's something else. But there has to be the I, otherwise we're just in the realm of false humility. Until you have that healthy sense of I, who is this individual, right? And then yes, that once I establish that, I could find the target around that. Otherwise, I'm in the space of actual hubris where it's not about me. So that statement, Vanis Filas, is actually a very humble one, and I think it goes to the core of our purpose in this world. If I believe in Torah and I believe in Chassidus, and I do, I was playing the song Vani B'Chazacha V'Tachli, Shlomo Kabach song, one of my favorite, and we tend to undermine the I thing in general, like all these stories, like that I starting with the sentence with the I is the source of the problem, and there's a lot of truth there, but isn't that the whole message? Is that something is coming from me? My job as an individual, my job as a Jew in the world actually permeated me to the degree that there has been some significant change in myself. And yes, I am trusting. I am doing something kind. Yes, that's the goal. That would be a problem if there was no sense of I in that. Now, when it becomes only that, yes, there's a problem. But when you don't have that, like, what do you have? So we're short on time, and there's a lot more I'd want to ask you, and hopefully we could do this again another time. But one question, I know it can sound cliche, but maybe for a good reason. What's the message you have for a 20-year-old Chezzi?
What message do I have? Oh, what would I have told myself at 20? Oh, that's a good shaila. Well, first of all, I would have at least stopped to see what kind of I would have observed myself more, and not try and to say, oh, you should do this or that. I would have wanted to see what comes to me naturally, what feeds me, what nurtures me, and then I would say, you should go do that and do as much of it as you can. Be as much of yourself as you can. And I would have said, no matter what you do, you should engage in humble work, even if you're a big balgaiva. My Yetzer Hara is still, is alive and well. And my ego it's still there, very strong. But there's something very grounding and that has been very helpful for me, and that's something that I would have told myself: you like the woodwork, do a lot of it, be prolific. Don't try and sell it to anyone. Don't try and make it cool. Just do a lot. Do a lot of the stuff that you love to do. Yeah, I don't know. It's a very hard thing. That's why now when I see somebody like, what am I supposed to? I don't know what you should. When someone asks me what's the message, you should do is be you as much as you be yourself. Be yourself, no matter where the wind blows. And
more and more recently, I think anyone who is afraid to encourage someone to go with themselves, find out what's going on, where their interests lie, what their thoughts are, where they want to go. Anyone who's afraid of that or engenders further fear around that does not really believe in truth. Let's say from a Jewish perspective, if you do not trust, let's say, your child or a young person enough to encourage them to go within themselves and find out for themselves, you don't believe in Teres Emes. Because what are you saying? You don't believe that they will eventually find truth? Why? You don't believe that they possess that truth? So it's either you're a Rebbe, in which case, what are you afraid of? Or you're not, and what business do you have stealing everyone's Taivas Elam Haza? It's like either it's true or it isn't. If it is, they will find it. Or it's not, and what the hell are you doing?
Yeah. Oh, I love
like the old saying, like, if you really love something, you'll let it go, and if it's meant to happen, it will come back.
Yeah. If you say, if this person if they're a part of the living God, who are you to not trust them? Let them. If you really believe, and if you don't believe, then why are you? What right do you have to rob them of
their opportunity to find out?
Yeah.
And I tend to always go back to the past, but today I'm 32, just turned 32, and you're, I don't know. No one is subjugating us. We're the ones holding the keys. And I need to remind myself to ask myself the question. Either I believe this is true or it isn't, in whatever regard. And if I believe it's true, why am I afraid to go and take that journey? Or I don't, in which case, get the hell out.
Yeah. It's a scary thing for parents to tell their children, and that's fine. It should be scary, but that's where faith comes in. That's where you have bitachon, And if you're having a problem with that, with letting a person be themselves, then you need to work on your own bitachon. It's like the famous story with this famous thing that the Rebbe Bzosha said. They're not going to ask me, in the Alma Dikshait, they're not going to say, why weren't you like Moshe Rabbeinu? Because I'm not Moshe Rabbeinu. They're going to say, why weren't you whoever you needed to be? And by the way, only you know that. No one could know that for you. No one really knows you like you know yourself. There's also that other beautiful story with, I don't know the story, but I know the punchline with Reb Hillel Padicher, where he did he was doing something maybe with a sukkah or lulav and esrog or this, and I think the Alter Rebbe, I don't know, I remember all the details, but he was mechabed him in a certain way, maybe he gave him a yechidus, I don't know what it was, and then another guy tried it, another guy did the same thing, and he came with tinus. He said, why didn't I get the same treatment that Hillel got? So he said, because Hillel did it, because that was him. Hillel was doing Hillel. You did it, Valkenasa Hillel. You did it. So why you're trying to get it's like Chazal say, Harba asu krib shimin v'layalsa biyadam. A lot of people tried to do like Rashbi, and it didn't work. And I always thought oh, that's cute. Yeah. No, it didn't work because you'll never beat up Shimon. It will never work. You could only try to be yourself. You try and be someone else, at the very best, you're an imposter. And you're robbing yourself
A successful imposter.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. A successful imposter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So here's
I feel like
the
we're just beginning. Ugh.
yeah.
No.
We're gonna go out on top, just like you left Chavav Yisrael. Thank you so much, Chezzi.
Yeah, my pleasure.
la la